That's how close it is.
Now, folks, so you clearly understand. It's advantage Bush, but it has been for quite some time. Can he close the deal? We just simply don't know. Bush has 240 electoral votes. That's with Alaska's just in 3 added. Gore has 231 with 270 needed to win. Take you back to the map because it's important to understand. Florida has 25 electoral votes. Even if Gore were to lose Florida, mathematically, he could still win. He'd have to run the table, get Arkansas, Iowa, Wisconsin, Washington, and Oregon. That's if Gore was to finally loses Florida. Arkansas, President Bush, 6 electoral votes drop in Arkansas, and they go for Bush. Now, does that mean Bush wins? No, it means he goes to 246 electoral votes to Gore's 231. Now, we said before that Bush was sort of camped at the 5-yard line. He moves down to about the 3-yard line. Can he stick it in? We don't know. Florida, Iowa, Wisconsin, Washington, and Oregon now get down to the decisive 5 since Arkansas, Bill Clinton's home state, has gone to Bush. Now, Governor George Bush, Karl Rove, and the others around him bragged, there's no other way to put it, all along in the campaign, we will carry the home states of Al Gore and Bill Clinton. They put up, and they delivered. They put up, now they can shut up because they've won the 6 electoral votes in Arkansas and 11 in Tennessee and can simply sit back and say, listen, we told you we were going to do it, and we did it. But the election isn't over. Closer and closer, Bush moves to the decisive 270 electoral votes, but there are enough out there in the states where the polls have closed, but no decision yet, for Gore still to win. It's odds against, but it can be done. Leslie Stahl, what do we know about control of the House?
Well, we don't know anything definitively. Best guess, and it is a guess, is that they will pick up not the 7 they need, but between 2 and 4. This will tighten the margin in the House between the 2 parties and make it, Dan, nearly impossible for the new Speaker, if it's Denny Hastert as the Republican, to really get anything done. The 2 parties are going to be that close to each other. But best guess, the Republicans hang on.
Well, speaking of Dennis Hastert, the Speaker of the House, the Republican Speaker of the House, he is with us now. Speaker Hastert, thank you for joining us. Leslie Stahl has just said, well, it looks like the Republicans will gain control of the House, keep it there, but it's going to be awful hard for you or any other speaker to get very much done. Do you agree with that?
Well, we were able to get some things done this year with a Democrat president and only at one point a 5-vote majority in the House. We balanced the budget for 4 consecutive years. We paid down the debt, $354 billion. We didn't touch a penny of Social Security or Medicare trust funds. That's a pretty good record. It's never been done before in any Congress. And, quite frankly, on things like health care and education, we need to do that in a bipartisan way. So folks need to work across the aisle on both sides to get those things done. And look forward to working with the new president. We're going to have a long wait tonight to see what our margin is in the House and certainly who becomes President of the United States. But I'm cautiously optimistic. We've been able to protect some of our seats in Kentucky and North Carolina and a couple other states where we thought we were very close. Plus, we picked up a few seats. So we feel pretty good so far.
Speaker Hastert, you don't mind if I call you Coach, but Speaker, if it turns out that you have a Republican president, a Republican-controlled Senate, even if Dick Cheney is the margin, and a Republican-controlled House, that's good for the country?
Well, it never happened in almost a half a century. And I think the issues of tax relief, tax reform, balancing the budget, paying down the debt, education reform, health care reform are some things that we can do, and we'll be working on that right away to get it done.
Dennis Hastert, Republican Speaker of the House, thank you for being with us, emphasizing that
my pleasure.
It now looks as though the Republicans will maintain control of the House, but with a very, very narrow margin. The electoral vote count at this hour, 246 for Bush, 242 for Al Gore. Washington State goes for Gore, keeping his hopes alive. 11 electoral votes in the Evergreen State. The motto up there is by and by, and in the sweet by and by, as it turns out for Gore, he gets Washington's 11 electoral votes. Is it too little, too late? No person can say. What we can say is that Gore's hopes are still alive, because now it's Bush 246, Gore 242. Let me tell you, I don't give people advice, but if the kids haven't gone to sleep, get them in the room, because people are going to be talking about this presidential race for a long time to come. Gore is 28 electoral votes away from becoming president of the United States. Bush is 24 electoral votes away. 246 Bush, 242 Gore. Let's go to the map, because now it's down to a decisive 4 states. Everything in red belongs to Bush. Blinking lights mean the states that went for Clinton Gore in '96 but have gone for Bush tonight. Bush has 246, all the states in red. Gore has 242, all the states in blue. Not many states in blue, but the big ones are, and that's the reason Gore is still in the hunt. He may be lagging a bit, but it's still possible. Florida, 25 electoral votes. Iowa with 7. Wisconsin with 11. Oregon with 7. This is now where the election is going to be decided. Our CBS News election coverage will continue in a moment with Bush out front, 246 to 242, with 270 needed to win.
It has a flat rear floor, so there's more room for your legs, which may or may not be a good thing.
Joey, cut it out!
Introducing the all-new Civic from Honda. Amazing, but true.
Disney presents a fantastic journey into the imagination. Now you can experience it all in a brand new full-length feature. It's a breathtaking celebration of sight, sound, and magic. From the animators that brought you Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King, and Aladdin, Fantasia 2000, rated G, coming to video and Disney DVD November 14th.
Do you want your parties to be really special? Try Rocher, the European speciality your guest will adore. Smooth chocolate, crunchy hazelnut, a luxurious taste sensation. It's more of a party with Rocher.
Now at Zales, save up to 50%. Plus, get an extra 10% off everything with your Zales charge card. Like this 5-carat bracelet, just $4.49 with your Zales charge. Now through Saturday at Zales stores nationwide, or shop online at Zales.com.
Wednesday on the funniest new sitcom this season.
Oprah, how are you?
Busy. You know how that is.
Please, I'm working on at least 10 projects here myself.
Ben idolizes Oprah Winfrey.
They're Oprah cakes. Healthy eating is all about commitment.
But Beth's biggest dream
I'm going to be on her book club next month. Check your local listing.
is about to become her most embarrassing moment.
I'm going to go now. Maybe you should.
Oprah guest stars
You're not getting a hug today.
on a brand new Beth. CBS Wednesday at 8, 7 Central.
One of the great close races in American presidential history. Dan Rather at CBS News election headquarters in New York. Bush 246, Gore 242, with 270 electoral votes needed to win. The race hangs in the balance. Here are the decisive 4. They're all in white on your map. The red, Bush has won. The blue, Gore has won. The ones in white, the polls have closed, but no decision. Florida, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Oregon. Now, let me give you an idea of how close this race is. First, let's go to Florida. These are votes actually in and counted, with 86% of the precincts reporting. And remember, there's a large absentee ballot to be counted there in Florida. Bush leads 50 to 48%, with 86% of the precincts reporting. 25 electoral votes there. Wisconsin, 11 electoral votes. And Gore leads Bush 47%, Nader getting 4% of the vote in Wisconsin. Wisconsin's 11 electoral votes, along with Florida's 25 out there. Bush leads in Florida now. Gore leads in Wisconsin. Moving to Iowa, 7 electoral votes. Gore leads 49 to 48%, with 76% of the precincts reporting. 7 electoral votes there in Iowa. And Oregon, where the polls have been closed for about an hour and 15 minutes now. 7 electoral votes. Bush 48%, Gore 46%, Ralph Nader 4%. Ed Bradley, let's go back to Florida. Those 25 electoral votes, we've been saying it since the first election coverage began so many hours ago, may decide it. Any figures that might be of interest to us besides the fact that Bush is leading by about 2 percentage points?
Well, the numbers that you just saw there, you've got about 103,000 votes separating Bush and Gore in Florida. And the CBS polling experts have taken a look at those numbers and where they're from and what's still to come in. And I think that there's about 86% of the vote that's still to come in. They expect that number to shrink, that margin to shrink. So Gore is going to creep up on Bush. They're not sure by how much. But here's a wild card here. You've got 30,000 absentee ballots from overseas. They're not going to be counted tonight. So we may be here all night, or we may have to come back tomorrow. This may not be decided in Florida tonight. It happened in 1988 when Connie Mack did not know that he won until the next day, the day after the election. And with those 30,000 ballots out there from overseas that aren't going to be counted tonight, as this margin shrinks, that could be the deciding factor.
And the Bush people would say, whether it's true or not, that those 30,000 absentee ballots from overseas would be mostly from U.S. military personnel and are likely to go to George Bush. Doesn't look good for Gore in Florida at this moment, but no person can say how it's actually going to go. The electoral vote count, 246 for Bush, 242 for Gore, with 270 needed to win. The popular vote count overall in the nation at this hour, 49-48, Bush leads in the popular vote. That could change with the now decisive 4, Florida, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Oregon still out there. On the map, the decisive 4 are Florida with 25 electoral votes, Iowa with 7, Wisconsin with 11, Oregon with 7. Electoral vote count, 246 Bush, 242 Gore. Our CBS News election coverage will continue in a moment. Stay here with us. One of these states could drop at any moment.
For the latest national and local election results that affect you the most, log on to CBS.com.
The presidential race still hotter than a Laredo parking lot, 246 to 242, Bush over Gore, with 270 needed to win. In the popular vote count nationwide, 49-48, Bush leads Gore in the overall national popular vote. The Electoral College map looks like this. All the states in red, Bush has carried. All the states in blue, Gore has carried. The big states, New York, Illinois, and California, have kept him in the race. Bush has carried 29 states with an electoral vote 246. Gore's carried 17 states plus D.C. Electoral College vote count of 242. Doesn't get much closer than this. Now, Bob Schieffer, Oregon with 7 electoral votes is still out. Wisconsin with 11 still out. Ralph Nader has run fairly strong in both those states.
Well, he certainly has. And don't forget, Dan, at the beginning of this, for the last month or so, the Democrats have been just terrified that that Al Gore would lose votes to Ralph Nader, that he would draw votes away from Al Gore. Now, it's not fair to say that the people who voted for Ralph Nader were only planning to vote for Al Gore. Surely some of them were going to vote for George Bush. But I think it is fair to say that if George Bush wins this election, he's going to kind of owe Al Gore. Maybe he'll offer him a cabinet post or something. I mean, I can't think of anybody else that Bush owes more to than Ralph Nader, the way this thing looks right now.
I have to say, though, and I don't want to be flip about it, that I think you're more likely to see a hippopotamus come running through this room than you are to see Governor Bush appoint Ralph Nader to the cabinet.
I didn't say that because I thought he was going to do it. I'm just saying that I can't think of anyone he would owe more than Ralph Nader at this point.
Leslie Stahl, these House races, looks like the Republicans are going to retain control of the House with a very, very thin margin. We can't say that certainly, but these House races can play a factor in the presidential race.
Well, what happened is when we started the race, the Democrats seemed to have all the issues in their favor, particularly prescription drugs for seniors, Patient's Bill of Rights, education. The Democratic leadership went out and told all their Republican candidates, the Republican leadership, muddy that issue. Tell everybody you're for prescription drugs for seniors. Tell them you're for a patient's Bill of Rights. And the issues got very confusing out there. And I think that may have happened at the presidential level as well. It was kind of brilliant on the Republicans' part.
Well, they also did one other thing, didn't they, Bob Schieffer? And that is that the more what the Democrats considered strident voices in the House, Tom DeLay, Dick Armey, who are part of the Republican leadership, they apparently went to the basement because you heard very little about them.
Well, George Bush kept them very much at arm's length. He made 2 visits to the U.S. Capitol during the campaign. Both times he made sure he was never photographed with Tom DeLay or any of the Republican leaders. He wanted them to run their own business, and he wanted to make sure everyone knew he was not a part of that.
And if George Bush wins, which he very well could do, that may be one of the reasons. The electoral vote count, 270 needed to win. Bush has 246. Gore has 242. States remaining out: Florida, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Oregon. Gore virtually has to run the table now to win, but the decision is not yet in. Florida, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Oregon, the polls have closed. The verdict is not in. The next presidency is hanging in the balance. This is election night on CBS. CBS News election night headline at this hour. Election day is over. The election of the next president is not, and we may not know for sure even after you finish the next pot of coffee. It's 12:30 a.m. here in the East. This is the up-to-the-minute electoral vote count. 246 Bush, 242 Gore, with 270 needed to win. This is the national popular vote at this hour. 49% Bush, 48% Gore. Bush has just over 37 million votes. Gore has almost 37 million votes. The polls are closed nationwide, including Alaska now. The final 4 decisive states, Iowa, Wisconsin, Oregon, and Florida, hold the electoral votes and the keys to the White House. And let's punch up now each of these states and show you how close the races are. First in Florida, 25 electoral votes. Bush leads 50% to 48% with 86% of the precincts reporting. These are votes in and counted. Remind you again, absentee vote counts may go way into tomorrow in Florida, and an estimated 30,000 absentee ballots from overseas will come into that state. The Bush people think that will lean toward them military people, but we'll have to see. Then moving on to Wisconsin, 11 electoral votes. Nader a factor there. Gore leads 48 to 47%, Nader with 4%. Wisconsin's 11 electoral votes are undecided. In Iowa, 7 electoral votes. Al Gore 49% to 48%. This is at 84% of the precincts reporting. This one could go either way. Tick tight here, has been all night long. And then out on the Pacific Coast, Oregon, another Nader state where Ralph Nader plays a role. 7 electoral votes. Bush leads in Oregon 48% to 47%, with Nader running at 4%, and this is with 69% of the precincts reporting. Ed Bradley, as we look at this presidential race, it's still mathematically possible for Al Gore to win, but advantage Bush.
The advantage is Bush. I mean, if you look at the numbers, if Bush wins Florida, he's home, right? Gore has to win Florida and something else, either Iowa, Wisconsin, or Oregon. At the moment, looking at the actual vote count in the 4 states out there, Gore is ahead in Wisconsin, he's ahead in Iowa, Bush is ahead in Oregon, and he's ahead in Florida.
Well, let me put it this way, Ed, to you and to the audience, and thinking about this. If Florida cannot be called with certainty tonight, and so far it's been the most confusing state in a very confusing night, if Florida can't be called tonight, Bush would have to win the other 3 that are still out there, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Oregon, to win. He has to win all of the other 3 if Florida can't be called tonight. Gore cannot, I repeat, cannot win if he doesn't carry Florida and at least one of the other states out there. Gore has to carry Florida and either Iowa or Wisconsin or Oregon in order to win. Bush can win without Florida if he carries Wisconsin, Iowa, and Oregon. So that's one way to put it. Now, Leslie Stahl, in the last few minutes, CBS, counting all over the country, estimates that the Republicans will retain control of the House of Representatives.
And the reason for that is, number one, George Bush, because he brought enough force to help those Republicans just by being at the head of the ballot. Number two, while the Democrats narrowed the fundraising gap between them and the Republicans still outspent the Democrats. Number three, big reason, Newt Gingrich is gone. Dennis Hastert, as you can see, has no image of an extremist. The Democrats had a difficult time running against those big bad Republicans in the House. And finally, the fact that they couldn't reach a budget agreement and that they didn't end the Congress deprived the Democrats of running against a do-nothing Congress because they weren't finished. So the Democrats couldn't bring out their guns as effectively as they had before against the Republicans.
Now, Bob Schieffer, double-check me. The last time we had a President, a Senate, and a House, all of the same party. I'm not saying that's going to happen. We're not prepared to say that's going to happen yet because Bush hasn't won the presidency. We think that the Republicans have retained control of the House. The last time that happened, do we have to go back to Eisenhower for that?
Well, didn't we at one point during the Reagan administration, it seems to me?
Well, Leslie, I'm not sure.
What about the first Clinton term? First Clinton term,
yeah.
He had the Democrats, first 2 years of the Clinton presidency, I believe he had both the House and the Senate.
Well, we're going to double, triple check that as we try to do everything. But Bob, for the moment, let's put this in perspective. Bush is right on the cusp. He's a half yard away, we would say, of crossing the goal line to win the presidency. He's a half yard out, but that could be a mighty tough half yard to get. With Florida, Iowa, Wisconsin, and Oregon still out there, and there's a strong case to be made that we may not actually know the outcome of this presidential race for some more hours and possibly even days. But Bush is poised to win the presidency. The Republicans have retained control of the House. Where do we stand on control of the Senate?
Well, we still have the possibility, a very good possibility, that we could have a 50-50 tie there. Democrats have to win 3 of 4 very close races out there, and they also have to hold the seat in Nebraska. But here's how close it is. In Missouri, we have a race that, even at this hour, we say is too close to call. In Michigan, the race out there too close to call. In Washington State, we have Maria Cantwell, the Democrat, leading, but we have not yet called that race. In Montana, we have the Republican, Conrad Burns. He is leading. That's his seat, but still too close to call. And in Nebraska, too close to call. So we don't know yet what's going to happen with the Senate.
One of the things Anchorman try to do is they never try to embarrass those around him. In no self-serving way, I'm going to say to you, Bob and Leslie, give the Anchorman a box of Dr. IQ candy bars, because if the Republicans retain their hold on the House, Senate, and gain control of the White House, it would be the first all-Republican government since the election of 1952, which isn't to say that the Democrats haven't had it, at least for a short time, in the Clinton administration.
In 92.
In 1992.
Yeah.
Now, electoral vote, 270 needed to win. Bush has 246. Gore has 242. The Electoral College map looks like this. All the states in red have been carried by George Bush. The ones in blue have been carried by Gore. The blinking lights mean a state where the Republicans did not carry it in 1996 and have carried it this time. The decisive 4, Florida with 25 electoral votes, Iowa with 7, Wisconsin with 11, Oregon with 7. 246 to 242 with 270 needed to win. Stay here with us. Dan Rather. We're back at CBS News election headquarters in New York with coverage of one of the great presidential races in American history. The Electoral College vote count, 270 needed to win. Our count is Bush 246, Gore 242. The overall national votes actually in and counted, Bush has a slight lead in that as well. This is the way, this is the popular vote, 49-48, Bush over Gore at this point. Now, let's go to the map. because this is where it's going to get decided. Florida with 25, Iowa with 7, Wisconsin with 11, and Oregon also with 7. John Roberts is at Gore headquarters in Nashville, Tennessee. John, we've all seen it. Football, basketball players, boxers, when their shoulders begin to slope a little bit, means they think they're going to lose. Is that the case in the Gore camp right now?
Well, they're still pretty optimistic, Dan, and one of the reasons why they're optimistic is because the Florida votes that are missing are votes that are coming from the Gold Coast, and that is the Miami-Dade and Broward area. Now, there's very heavy Jewish voters in that area. There's a lot of African-American voters. There's also a big Cuban vote there, though. Population center of about 3.5 million people. Are there 103,000 votes in there for Al Gore? Too early to tell, but certainly people here have their fingers crossed as you can hear them cheering behind me. If they can win Florida, it's going to take a lot of pressure off the race, Dan.
Indeed, he will, John Robertson. Those of you, whether you could hear over the shouting behind John there, but John was saying that the Gore people are holding out some hope for Florida because they say, remember there's some precincts where the vote isn't counted. If we get up the actual vote count in Florida, that 86% of the precincts are in and counted in Florida. But it is said by the Gore people, with this race now in Florida, 50% for Bush, 48% for Gore, some 88% of the precincts reporting, 25 electoral votes at stake here. The Gore people are holding out some hope. And I'll come back to this in a moment. Let me just finish it for right now. Washington Senate goes to Cantrell. We'll talk about that in just a second. But in Florida, what John Roberts was saying, the Gore people believe that the precincts outstanding in Florida now are mostly on the so-called Gold Coast, where the Democrats think they will run the strongest. Now you can say, well, that'll be offset by Bush's absentee ballots in Florida. Who can say? What we can say is Florida's 25 electoral votes remain undecided, and it may be they'll remain undecided for a very, very long time. Now, Bill Whitaker is in Austin, Texas, where they've been standing by to celebrate and to uncork the champagne and to go to some of those long necks a long time ago. Bill, still a big crowd there, still anxiously awaiting an outcome tonight?
Well, Dan, it is cold and rainy here in Austin, but all eyes are focused on the Sunshine State. Florida has always figured prominently in Bush's victory strategy. He visited the state about a dozen times, pushing his Social Security plan and his Medicare reform plan to the seniors, his tax cuts to the middle-class folks in the central part of the state. And it's more than political, it's personal. His brother